So we are still looking at trigonometric of a right angled triangle. Okay, so we are still on trigonometry, okay, and we are looking at the right angled triangle and the ratios. So in the first video we have considered what a sine ratio is. We have also considered what a cosine ratio is. We have considered what a sine ratio is, and now I just want to explain just a bit on the cot, sec, and cosecant ratios. Okay, sorry about that. So our cotangent ratio is equal to cos over sine. Now in the previous video we saw that cos is equal to adjacent over hypotenuse and sine is equal to opposite over hypotenuse. So if we divide the ratios for cos and for sine, we get adjacent over opposite as the ratio for cot. So cot is equal to opposite, adjacent, right? Adjacent over opposite. Now secant is equal to tan, which is tangent, over sine ratio. Now we know that tan is equal to opposite over adjacent and sine is equal to opposite over hypotenuse. If we divide the two ratios, that is the ratios for tan and sine, this gives us hypotenuse over adjacent as the ratio of a secant function. The same thing applies to cosecant. Cosecant is equal to cot, which is cotangent, over cosine ratio. Now we know that cot is equal to adjacent over opposite side, and cosine is equal to adjacent side over hypotenuse side. That is from our right angled triangle that we generated these ratios. This gives us hypotenuse over opposite, right, as the ratio for cosecant. Now let us use these ratios to solve the values for the sine, cosine, and tangent. We will also use these ratios together with a triangle that will be given to find the value of secant, cosecant, and cotangent. Okay, we are still under trigonometric functions. Now I want to look at some special angles, that is the 30 degrees, 45 degrees, and 60 degrees. Now considering these angles on the right angled triangle with equal adjacent sides and a theta of size 45 degrees, we can calculate the value of sine 45, the value of cos 45, tan 45, and cot 45. Let's start with sine 45. We know that sine is equal to opposite over hypotenuse, right? We just have to substitute. Our opposite is the opposite of our theta that we have been given. So the opposite side to our function, to our theta, that is the angle that we have, theta here, which is 45 as we've been given, is equal to opposite, which is 1 over hypotenuse, which is the square root of 2. So this gives sine 45 is equal to 1 over the square root of 2, right? Now cosine is equal to adjacent. Our adjacent is 1. Our hypotenuse is the square root of 2. So these two functions, that is the sine function and the cos function, have the same values on 45 degrees angle. Now we can calculate for tan. We know that tan is equal to sine, right? Is equal to sine ratio over cosine, right? Now we know that we are still considering sine 45 and cos 45, right? Now this is giving us, we know that sine 45 is 1 over the square root of 2. We are dividing this by cos 45. Now cos 45 is also equal to 1 over the square root of 2. This gives us a value of 1. Right. We can also calculate cotangent. We know that cotangent is equal to cos 45 over sine 45. So we have cos 45 is equal to sine 45. Now we know that both cos 45 is equal to, sine 45 is equal to 1 over the square root of 2, and sine 45 is equal to 1 over the square root of 2. So we are dividing these two, which gives us 1 as the value of cot 45 degrees. We can proceed and look at the isosceles triangle. You can remember the definition of an isosceles triangle. This is just a triangle having two equal sides, which makes the base angles equal. As you can see from the triangle, we have a 60 degrees here, and here we have a 60 degrees. So the base angles are equal. Look at the sides are also equal, as you can see there. Now we have two angles, the 60 and a 30 degree. So the opposite and the adjacent sides will vary depending on the angle that we consider. For example, we want to consider sine 30 degrees. We know that sine 30 is equal to opposite over adjacent, over hypotenuse. Now sine 30 is right here. The opposite side to this angle is 1, and the hypotenuse is 2. So the value for sine 30 degrees is going to be 1, which is our opposite, over hypotenuse, which is 2. When we come to cosine 60 degrees, cos 60 degrees is right there. The side which is opposite to this angle is the square root of 3, right? Now we know that cos is equal to adjacent over hypotenuse. This gives us this gives us adjacent is equal to 1 over hypotenuse is equal to 2, which gives us 45. Now we come to tangent, that is tangent 30. We know that tangent is equal to sine 30 that's sine 30 over cos 30. Now what are we getting here? We know that sine 30 gave us 1 over the square root of 2, right? Okay. Now, what about cos 30? Cos 30 is equal to adjacent over hypotenuse. So cos 30, we are going to divide by cos 30, which is equal to adjacent is the square root of 3 over, that is over, so sine 30 is equal to half. Now cos 30 is equal to adjacent over hypotenuse, which is 2, right? Now this gives us 1 over 3. I mean 1 over the square root of 3. So this is the value for tan 30. Now we can solve cot. For cot 60 degrees, we know that cotangent is equal to cos 60 degrees over sine 60 degrees. Now we know that finding cos 60 degrees is equal to half, right? Because when you go to 60, your adjacent is equal to 1 over 2. Now we are dividing this by sine 60. Now sine 60 degrees, if you check, right, sine 60 degrees is equal to opposite over hypotenuse, which will give you the square root of 3 over 2, right? Now if you divide that, you are going to find the value of cot 60 degrees to be 1 over the square root of 3. Alright, so this is what we are getting. Okay, so we can proceed. We can also try to solve cosec 60 or cosec 60 degrees using this ratio here. We know that cosec 60 degrees is equal to cot 60 over cos 60. But we know that cot 60 degrees is what we are just from finding, and we've gotten 1 over the square root of 3 as the answer for cot, right? Now we are dividing this by cos 60. Now check out what cos 60 was. Cos 60 was 1 over 2, right? So we are dividing this by 1, right? By 1 over 2, or by half. Now what does this give us? This gives us 2 over the square root of 3. So this is the value of cosec 60. You can also try to go direct simply by plugging in your hypotenuse over your opposite. Our hypotenuse is 2, right? Now our opposite of 60 is the square root of 3. From this you can see that either way, whether you go by using the properties, that is cosec 60 degrees is equal to cot 60 degrees over cos 60 degrees, or when you go direct using the sides, that cosec 60 degrees is equal to hypotenuse over opposite, you are getting the same answers as we can see. Alright, please make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you can watch more videos and benefit. In the next video, we are going to solve some more questions. This will be our third video on trigonometric functions.